Hey everyone, welcome to Lectionary Q. My name is Dennis Sanders. I am the lead pastor of First Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in St. Paul, Minnesota. For those of you who don't know, the Q stands for questions, because I tend to take usually a piece of the Revised Common Lectionary every week, and then I kind of ask questions from the text. This is usually what I'm doing is a first draft of my sermon prep, um, and kind of having you all join in because you're probably all doing the same thing that I'm doing and trying to prepare for this Sunday's sermon. And so I'm kind of having you all join in. And so I usually have a short reflection on the text, and then we kind of go from there. So for this week's reflection is for Sunday, November 9th, 2025. It is for the 22nd Sunday after Pentecost, and we're looking at Luke 20:27 through 38. So I will do the reflection first, and then we'll talk a little bit about ask the questions on the text. So what is going on here? And, the Sadducees are asking Jesus a question. Okay, that makes sense. But the question really is one of those, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin kind of questions. They take what is a custom in Jewish law to protect the widow and blow it out of proportion. So you can see one of these guys is coming up and asking Jesus, so if a woman's husband dies and his brother then marries her, yeah, and then he dies and then his brother marries her, and so on and so on. And Jesus, you can just see Jesus, that his eyes just start to roll farther and farther and farther into the back of his head, because he kind of knows where this is headed. But there is a kind of a serious point to all of this. And as I was thinking about this, it made me kind of think about some serious notes. The day after my mother died, this was about almost 2 years ago now, my husband shared a message from a friend of ours on Facebook. It was a very meaningful message, basically saying that I was her legacy. And in the midst of my grief, I was incredibly touched by that note. Having children, and you hear this from a lot of people, is a sense of immortality. It's a legacy that outlasts you. That has been the case for a long, long time. And I think that was a thrust behind this really odd question that had Jesus rolling his eyes. That is the concept behind Levirate marriage, which is summarized in Deuteronomy 25, verses 5 and 6. Theologian and pastor Bob Cornwall points out that really the key of this passage is found in verse 6. The reason that they do this is that so that and it's quote unquote, so that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. So the whole point of that is that you're doing this is that you want to keep the family name going. Now, yeah, since the Sadducees didn't believe in the resurrection, it made sense that they were going to place more emphasis on this than anything else. Now, of course, this whole thing wasn't the point. The whole point of why they asked this question really was to trip Jesus up. It was a loaded question. But the thing is that in human terms, we focus on legacy. We focus on who's going to carry our names after we're gone from this mortal coil. But Jesus' answer to the Sadducees and to us is to look ahead to the resurrection. But that's hard. It's hard, especially for us moderns, because we have a hard time believing in anything other than what we see with our own two eyes. We're worried that our names might be forgotten. But the reality is that in Christ, Our names aren't forgotten. We aren't forgotten. That's the whole point of the resurrection. The resurrection means that we're not forgotten. I'm grateful to the legacy of my dear mother. I'm grateful that I am a legacy of my dear mother. I'm grateful that I'm a legacy to my dad. But I also know that I look forward to the resurrection when I will see them again. I don't put my hope in a legacy, but in Christ, who brings new life. And when I can look forward to that great getting up morning. So here are the questions that I have. Number 1, why do you think the Sadducees asked Jesus such an outlandish question? Number 2, what did Jesus mean when he said, quote, those who belong to this age marry and are given in marriage, unquote? Number 3, read Luke 19:45 through 48. How does this passage connect to our lectionary passage this week? And number 4, read verses 38 and 39. They say that Jesus answered well, and they, I mean the Sadducees, say that Jesus answered well because they dare not ask any more questions. Why do you think they said that? Excuse me. So what are your answers to these questions? Did they bring up any more questions? If you have any more questions that you'd love to share, feel free to send them to lectionaryq@substack.com. And remember that you can feel free to listen to this podcast on your favorite podcast app. Feel free to leave a rating or a review that helps others find this podcast. Thanks for listening. You can find this podcast on Substack, and I hope that you can like and subscribe. That will be great. And that is it for this episode of Lectionary Q. I try to make this a regular. It's not always going to be a regular podcast just because, as I've said before, being bivocational, you don't always have the time to do it, but I try to be there, to be regular when I can. So I want to say it's more occasional, but I will try to be every week when I can, as much as possible. So that is it for this week for Lectionary Q. I'm Dennis Sanders, your host. Take care, everyone. Godspeed. And hopefully I'll see you next week.